Welcome back to MetaMinds Online. We are a mentoring service helping conscious people destroy their limiting beliefs and unlock the life of their dreams. And on today's episode of the podcast, we had Jarrod Hanning joining us. He is a mindset coach and an all-round just expert on the mindset field. We got so much gold in here about mindset push-ups, about how you can kind of train your mind to achieve at a higher level. Just so much tips on success really throughout this entire podcast here.
Yeah, and there's no woo-woo in this. He's definitely anti-woo-woo, and there's a lot of practical tips. You don't even have to kind of listen to anything else after this. Just listen to the podcast. I'm sure you'll walk away with some practical tips that you can implement in your life to get better results. We got so much gold there, and there's some amazing stories in there as well. So at the very least, listen for the stories. Thanks for watching, and jump into it. First of all, Jarrod, thank you very much for joining us, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Good to be here.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of what it is that you do and how it relates to mindset?
So I work as a performance coach. My clients normally double their income by purposely working half as many hours. I know off the top that sounds like snake oil, and please hold my feet to the fire during our conversation over that. But essentially what it comes down to is that when your brain begins to solve problems from a higher level, then it's able to see more of the picture. Just like if you're in the corn maze, it's easy to get lost and not know if you should go left or right. But when you stand on a ladder, you can see the whole maze and there's no longer a mystery. And so that's the work that I do for their businesses, to teach their brain how to think at a higher level.
Yeah, right. And how did you kind of uncover that approach to working with people?
Back in the day, I was classically trained musician and I was full-time in classical music. And what some people don't know about classical music is that when you're singing to the radio in the car or clapping your hands or whatever it is, you're activating more different parts of your brain than any other time of your life. This is well documented with MRI studies, and this is a sharp contrast with athletic performance, where the better your body is performing athletically, the less of your brain you're using, because your body can't afford for that glucose to go to the brain. It needs the glucose to go to the muscles. This doesn't mean that music is better than athletic performance. It's just a different way of using your brain. So at that time, I was giving a series of talks, The Musical Secrets of Leadership, The Musical Secrets of Productivity, training people how to access different parts of their brain on demand, because this had a huge impact on their innovation and production and their power at work. This is big stuff for entrepreneurs and small business owners. What led to the shift out of classical music full-time into performance coaching, being a mindset performance trainer, is I was at a conference one time and this guy asked me about an assessment. And I had never heard of this assessment. I was like, no, tell me more. This was the Mind Scan. This was from the work of Robert Hartman in the 50s. And there's only a handful of people in the world that use it. And I just happened to run into the guy. And so I tried it out. And what made it different was the way it visually represents how your brain solves problems. And that became the missing link for the work I was doing. I was able to teach you how to access different parts of your brain on demand so that you could purposely work less hours because you were solving problems at a higher level. But I wasn't able to show you how you were currently solving those problems. And so that fortuitous day, speaking at a conference, bumping into a guy in the line, provided the missing link for my business. And ever since then, everything I do is run through that process.
Love it. I suppose like a lot of people are really visual learners. And when you're talking about mindset in the brain, a lot of it is theory based, and so it can be hard to kind of wrap your head around it. So I suppose can you tell us a little more about how these visual patterns kind of allow you to actually, do more with less?
Okay. There are obviously different ways of thinking. We call these thinking patterns. And a thinking pattern is kind of a priority that your mind has as it's solving problems. Some people, when they're stressed, the priority is to connect with people. So if there's a mess on their to-do list, say more on there than they have time to get done, and their brain's stressed out, Their brain goes, let me call Tom, see what Tom's up to. Let me see if Fred can have lunch today. Their brain solves problems by connecting with people. There's another way of thinking that solves problems by taking action. We're lost in the woods. This person says, hey, we need to go this way. That's their approach. The more action you take, the more results you get. It's just a strategy. It's a way of thinking. Doesn't mean it's the truth. And whenever that person is around the relationship person, like, it's irritating because the relationship person says, well, wait, hold on. Let's not just start walking that way. How are you guys doing? How do you guys feel? Because they solve problems by connecting with people. But the action taker's like, it doesn't matter how you feel. We're lost. Doesn't matter. Gotta go. And then there's another strategy that says, well, hold on, let's think about this. We don't want to pick the wrong direction, make our situation worse. So let's think about this. And that pisses off the action taker. We're burning daylight. We'll figure it out as we go. And that pisses off the connection person. We're dealing with people here. We ain't got time for your spreadsheet. So there's no perfect strategy. The way that your individual mind mixes those different intelligences, and there's about 6 of them that we track, is as unique as you are. It's like a fingerprint of your thinking. But let's take a look at some of the strengths and weaknesses of some of the thinking patterns. So one thinking pattern places a really high priority on solving problems by taking action. Go, do. This person prides themselves on getting things done. They're a real hustler, a real achiever. We can always count on them to get things done. This is the kind of person that writes a list of to-do list items just so they can check them off. Like, checking things off their to-do list causes them to feel like they're getting something done. But it's an illusion. Whenever the brain solves problems by taking action, it just looks for action to take. And this is why, for that individual, they always have more on their to-do list than they have time to get done. This is why working harder and faster doesn't clear it up. Because doing something doesn't solve the reason that it needed to be done to start with. Tomorrow, you're just going to have to do it again. It's like sending an email. For every email you send, you get 1.2 emails back. Email isn't a productivity tool. Sending an email just ensures you're going to have more emails to read tomorrow. And that's this mindset of work harder and faster, take more action, check more things off your to-do list. So for this person, because of the way their brain solves problems, when they look at their to-do list and there's more on there than they have time to get done, their brain goes, crap, there's more here than I have time to get done, so I need to work harder and faster. Because again, the brain solves problems by doing. And that's why at the end of the day, it feels like they didn't move the ball forward. It feels like they spent most of their day doing somebody else's work. It feels like there's just as many things on their to-do list as there were in the beginning of the day. And when somebody comes to them and they're like, why don't you hire somebody to help with this? They're like, well, I don't have the money to train them. Well, of course you don't, because your brain values you doing the work. So it's going to look for reasons that you can't afford to hire somebody. Well, I tried hiring somebody and they screwed it up, so I had to redo it. It's better for me to just do it to start with. Well, of course it's better for you to do it to start with. Your brain values solving problems by you being the one doing the work. Well, there's no need for me to write it down because it's organized in my head. It's faster for me to just do the work. Well, of course it's faster for you to do the work because that's how your brain solves problems. And so for this person, while they pride themselves on being an action taker, they always have more on their to-do list than they have time to get done. Working harder and faster doesn't get it. At the end of the year, they tell themselves, next year I'm just going to try harder. But trying harder is that lie. It doesn't actually move the ball forward because it's more of the same. This is a strategy. It is a way of thinking. Now, it's not wrong. There is certainly a time and a place for stupidly blind, massive action. But if you keep getting to the end of the year and you're like, next year I'm going to try harder. Next year I'm really going to apply myself. At some point, we need to go, maybe trying harder isn't it. Maybe we need to print up your thinking patterns so we can see the way your brain has been solving problems so we can see where the breakthrough is that's waiting for you, so we can see where the blind spot is that's been tripping you up all this time. So that's just an example of how a way of thinking, a certain pattern for how your brain juggles those 6 variables can work for you good enough that you can't see all the ways that it's working against you.
Love it. I love how passionate you are about this topic to start with, and also some of what you were talking about there definitely resonates with me. I'm a to-do list kind of guy. I think I'm quite efficient. I get a lot of work done, and I do feel like I work smarter. But also sometimes I feel like I'm doing a task just to tick it off. And it's interesting because obviously as you said, these are tactics that our brain has developed over however many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, and they're not wrong. They probably worked really well when we were, we didn't have technology and we didn't have like the 8-hour workday and we were just moving rocks around, you know what I mean, to build the cave. Like that was probably a great tactic. But obviously technology has developed and our brains haven't really had the chance to catch up. So in your work, you recognize one of these 6 kind of patterns in people, and then what kind of happens for you to actually get them to see how to work smarter and not harder, I suppose?
That is an interesting conversation. That's an interesting conversation. So people come in and they're like, all right, let's take a look under the hood. Let's see what's going on. I've been in business for 3 years, but I make the same amount of money every year. I'm not leveling up. I'm not growing. Whenever I have a great opportunity to grow, it just feels like I never have enough time to do it. I never have enough money to do it. So I'm recognizing these patterns in my life where things aren't working, even though I'm working hard. I'm doing everything I know to do. If there's something else to do, I'd be willing to do it. So you got me. Fine. Show me the graph. Show me what's going on in my head, right? So we print up their thinking patterns to see what's going on. And then 3 things happen. One group of people looks at it and says, all right, cool. I know exactly how to do that. I know exactly how to think that way because there's patterns that produce more free time. There's patterns that produce more revenue. There's patterns, more relationship and connection. I mean, you all know somebody that owns 3 businesses, but they don't work 3 full-time jobs. They work like 10 hours a week. They have more than enough time for their family, more than enough time for their community. Even though they're working on these multi-million-dollar projects, you could call their cell phone, interrupt them in the middle of the day, and they'd have more than enough time for you. Well, there's a way of thinking that keeps creating that in their life because their brain solves problems differently. So some people come in and they see the opportunity. They see how their brain could be solving problems differently so that it begins to serve them instead of get those little hits of dopamine because they did something that made sense, like checking something off their to-do list. They realize there's a way that they could actually start moving the ball forward on a massive scale. So there's always more than enough free time, always more than enough revenue. So they see that and they go, aha, yes, they know exactly how to think that way. Bullshit. But they're convinced that they do. They genuinely feel that it's just a matter of trying harder. It's a trap. Here's the thing. Whatever's going on in your life, don't have enough time, don't have enough money, don't have the right relationships, whatever it is, there are 3 truths that are keeping that cycle in place. Number 1, you are already doing everything you know to do. Like, let's be honest about it. You're not a slacker. If there was something else to do, you'd be doing it. Number 2, everything you're doing seems like a really good idea. It's logical, rational, reasonable. You're no dummy. What that means is working smarter isn't going to make a difference either, or it would have by now. Number 3, a breakthrough in your situation will at first sound like a bad idea. If it made sense to do, you'd already be doing it, yo. And that's the problem with seeing how somebody else's brain solves problems differently and going, man, I know exactly how to think that way. Really? Thinking that way is at first going to feel like the dumbest idea you've ever done. because your brain isn't set up for a pain, pleasure, reward system to support those new neural networks. Now, after that, there's a second group of people. Second group of people sees what's been going on in their current thinking, sees the opportunity of different patterns that might serve them better, and is sick and tired of the cycle. They're like, man, for the past 3 years, I've made the same amount of money. For the past 3 years, I've been promising myself I'm going to take my family on this vacation. For the past 3 years, I've been promising myself I'm finally going to learn how to dance or play a musical instrument or scuba dive or whatever it is. And I'm tired of promising myself that. I'm tired of moving things on my to-do list back to the next page. I'm tired of that. Help me out. How do I learn to think that way? Then there's a third group of people. They see what's possible. They see where they're at in a way that they've never seen before. I mean, 30% of the people who see it are in tears because it's so emotionally meaningful and validating and empowering. And there's a third group of people that goes through that process. And at the end of it, they say, you know who really needs this is a friend of mine, because if they could learn to think this way, their life would be so much better.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting because you even mentioned that when you're trying to kind of change someone or give someone some sort of insight into a way that might be working successfully for you, it's quite common to get an egoic response back where, it's almost challenging for them. And if they're not prepared to change, then they're not going to see it as potentially like a moving forward step for them. So like when you're working with these businesses and you do have people who might be, chucking back some negative responses or they have some objections towards you, like how do you manage someone in that position where their ego is potentially taking hold, or do you not work with those type of people?
Acknowledge that where they're at works for them. And this is not time for them to do the work. And that's okay. That is okay. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And like you mentioned before the podcast started that you have a selection of maybe 10 people that you work with or 10 businesses you work with throughout the year. Like how do you go through the process of deciding on those businesses?
People come into my world and maybe they follow me on my podcast or YouTube channel. Maybe they try the mind scan for themselves just to see what's possible there. It's like a sample, taste the ice cream at the ice cream shop. See, now you've experienced it. You know what it's like. And then usually kind of they would be on a wait list until we have time where we can really focus on them.
Yeah, right. And like in terms of, the kind of preliminary stages when you do sit down with an individual, like I guess, because you do work with businesses, but I'm thinking for maybe our audience, if there's like individuals out there that might want to improve their mindset or they might want to start taking some more productive actions instead of just the dopamine hit of crossing off a list, like what kind of, do you have a handful of tips that might be beneficial to just individuals out there as well of how to instill change?
So, obviously you could just hop on my website and download the executive summary for my new book, because it is nothing but tips, strategies, techniques. It even has like visual displays of the different thinking patterns so you can kind of get a feel for what's possible. And then practical action, do this tomorrow, do this today. So all that's available in the executive summary. But real quick though, while we're here and talking about what some of those strategies are, some ways to start solving problems differently outside of doing the mindset work, outside of doing the mindset push-ups and all that stuff that like physically rewires the way your brain solves problems. Practical tips that they could do. Get clear on your sweet spot. Your sweet spot being the thing that brings the most value to your business. Now, between 0 and 100,000, that's going to be some form of sales. Sales cures all ills. Whether that is people come into your world as new clients because you're networking, because you're speaking, because you're putting out content, because you're constantly massaging your Facebook ads, whatever it is. Between 0 and 100,000, sales cures all else. Get clear on your sweet spot. Now, between 100,000 and 1 million, recruiting solves all ills. Constantly the same thing, networking, putting out content, massaging ads, whatever it is. But now the purpose is to find the right people for the right jobs at the right time in your company. So your sweet spot, whatever it is. The second thing is start your day by honoring your sweet spot. End your day with all the other minutia. So here's what usually happens for people that are stuck in that 0 to 100,000 hamster wheel. What they say is, I'm not big enough to hire somebody. I don't have enough money to hire somebody. Even if I did hire somebody, I don't have enough time to train them. Well, if you'll look at your to-do list, if you're in that 0 to 100,000 growth phase, if you'll look at your to-do list, 9 out of 10 things on your to-do list, and I dare say everything on your to-do list, could be outsourced to somebody for $10 or $15 an hour, provided you had already documented the system on how to do it. Turn to page 3 of the manual, follow step A, go to step B, go to step C. Brain simple, even a monkey couldn't screw it up. Provided there was the right system that was so simple nobody could screw it up, and you had taken time to document that, everything on your to-do list could be outsourced to somebody for $10 or $15 an hour. Like, for crying out loud, even brain surgeons and rocket scientists outsource tasks. Surely we can do it too. So when somebody's in that 0 to 100,000 hamster wheel and they're like, man, I just don't have enough money to hire somebody. Well, no wonder. It's because you're frantically checking off $10 an hour tasks all day long. You can't solve a bad strategy with stubbornness. That's why you don't have the extra money, because you're spending all your time and energy on the lowest paying task. So we've got clear on the sweet spot, the zone of genius, the thing that you do better than anything else, that you enjoy the most, that makes the biggest difference, that drives the most value to your business. Now, if it's 0 to 100,000, that's probably going to be some form of sales or market attraction, because sales cures all ills. Start your day by honoring your genius in that zone. End your day with all the other stresses and pressures around it. If you will do that, it won't be very many days until you've got more than enough money to hire somebody to take care of all the little stresses and pressures so that you can spend even more time in your zone of genius. You cannot make a difference in your clumsy. You have to be in your genius. For most people in that cycle, I think those two things will help break it for them.
Love that, Jarrod. And I'm a huge systems guy myself. And we talk a lot about life systems here at MetaMinds. And it's kind of like, you mentioned that sales cures all ails. I love that little rhyme. Something that I say quite often that I learned from one of my mentors was is that people make the systems, and people run the systems, and systems run the business. And that's exactly kind of what you're saying there. But yeah, we talk about life systems where it's kind of like almost doing the same sort of thing as you, where you're spending a lot less time doing all the things in life, because instead of all these randomized things that you do, like, brushing your teeth is a system, for example, you probably wouldn't document that because it's quite menial, you wouldn't need to. But if it's like your meal prep or something along those lines, you document all these things in your life, and then all of a sudden you have systems for all of these things in place, which can cut your time in half almost. So it's kind of the same in life, but also the same in business. And we have a couple of really cool systems that we've kind of come up with. How do you find your clients actually, like, how does someone recognize when they are in need of a mentor, whether it be a business or a mindset mentor?
You're in need when you're in pain. You're in need when you keep having the same cycles, don't have enough time, don't have enough money. You're in need when you decide to be up to something bigger in life. So here's kind of a couple silly examples about why you need to be up to something bigger in life. I have friends that struggle with their fitness, health, weight, whatever it is, right? They're on the wagon, off the wagon. They start something, stop, start something, stop. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not bad people. It just means that they're not up to something bigger. They don't have something inspiring that pulls them forward. I have other friends who, for whatever reason, decided that they could not live with themselves being fat couch potatoes anymore. And so they decided that they're going to run a triathlon that year. And now they're training for triathlons. Well, my friends that are training for triathlons do not struggle with their weight, health, fitness, diet. They don't struggle with stopping by the donut store on the way home. It's not because they're better people. It's not because they have more focus or willpower or discipline. It's just because they're up to something bigger. And when you're up to something bigger, your current problems just sort of melt away. So how does somebody know that they could benefit from a performance coach, mindset coach, something like that? When they're in pain and they're tired of the cycle. Let's get you thinking at a higher level so it's not a problem. That being said, if somebody is going to look at that, there's a small difference that you want them to look for. A life coach is going to tell you and work with you kind of like this. A life coach goes, "Oh, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think you should do?" You call a life coach up because your life is in shambles, and they say, "Well, what are you going to do about that?" Look, what you think you should do is what has you messed up to start with. Now, when you go to the gym and you hire a strength trainer, a strength coach, they don't say, "What exercise do you think we should do today?" No, you say, "I want to achieve this result within this time frame." They say, "Got it. Do 3 of those, do 2 of those, come back and see me tomorrow." And that's why you get results like that. That's the difference between a performance coach and a life coach. Performance coach gives you the structure, the exercise, the process. A life coach asks questions. I'm not saying that life coaches are bad or wrong. I'm just saying that depending on what you're trying to achieve and the timeline you're trying to achieve it, there is a difference between a performance coach and a life coach.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we're not the biggest fans of the word life coach. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some negative connotations, I think, to that, as you kind of alluded to there. So in terms of like people out there who really want to manifest their desires, like what kind of tips, gold, what kind of mindset advice could you give to people out there who really want to just manifest their desires? Do you have any process?
Okay, so in the realm of the woo-woo, it's funny, we just got through talking about life coaches, and here we are.
Yeah. Nice
strategizing
transition.
like a life coach already. Okay, so you mentioned the word manifest.
Yeah.
Here is, practically speaking, what somebody can do to change the way their brain solves problems in the realm of manifest. And I'm going to use the word manifest to describe the types of goals and desires that feel like they're out of our control. It would require a magical wand for that to happen in our life with the way things are going. We don't use manifest for practical, physical processes. Like nobody manifests lose weight. It's called go for a walk today. Like there's no manifesting there. But somebody would manifest meeting the #1 weight loss trainer in their country because that feels like it's out of our control. Okay, so practically speaking, what can you do to get your mind operating on that frequency in such a way that it brings it into your life? This is called reality hacking. Here's how you do it. Write down the goal. I mean, the stupid goal, right? Just obscenely impossible, unrealistic, whatever it is. My name is Johann Magnus. Women want me and men want to be me. I make $1 million every minute. Like whatever, no matter how insane your desire goal, whatever it is. And this, the more outlandish it is, the better this works. So you write it down. Every night, you're going to write down 10 pieces of evidence that you came across that day that indicate it's true. Now, anybody can come up with 3. Anybody can come up with 3. So let's say that you write that down, right? I'm good looking. Everybody wants to be me, and I make way too much money. Let's say that you write that down. And you go throughout your day, and whatever, you're at the grocery store, and somebody says, hey man, where'd you get those shoes? Oh, these? Saw an ad for them on Facebook. Thought they're pretty cool. Yeah, they're good looking. Maybe I'll try them. That's the extent of it, okay? Well, that night, as you're going back trying to find evidence for why it's true, you would write that down. Because that kind of attention from strangers complimenting about the energy that you're bringing into the world is the kind of thing that happens for somebody like that. So your brain would count that as evidence. It would write it down. Maybe you're on Facebook and you see an ad for marketing for your business, and you click it so that you can grow and learn and expand your marketing skill set. Well, you would write that down that night, because those kinds of people are constantly leveling up their skill set, constantly leveling up how they show up in life. And so you would write that down. That would be evidence that this is true, or at the very least, in the process of becoming true. Now, anybody can write down 3. 5 is a stretch. 10 is damn near impossible. It's going to hurt your head. You are going to have to work to come up with 10. It's going to be tough. But that tough is what physically rewires your brain to see the world for things that it was missing all along. Do this until other people around you see it themselves. That will physically rewire the way your brain solves problems throughout the day, because your brain is now looking for things that it wasn't looking for. There is my practical strategy for manifesting.
Love it. Yeah, we have a couple of processes that when we work with clients that are somewhat similar. So I really love that, and as you mentioned, like the word manifesting, it kind of has a lot of woo-woo kind of connotations, but in reality, like I love that you're really pushing the practical aspect of it, because that's what it is. And you can't just manifest, a new car out of nowhere.
Not with that.
No, not with that. So in terms of these exercises, number 1, do you do them for yourself? And number 2, what might be on, for example, your list at nighttime when you write down those 10 things?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a very distracting thought. I just realized that you guys are in Australia.
Yeah.
And I am drinking from the Koala Bottle.
Oh, cool. Oh. Is that an American company or?
Little koala there. Koala Bottle. A guy in my town invented these bottles.
Yeah.
They were first invented for riding bikes. Instead of having to pull the bottle out of the bottle cage, which is a little clumsy when you're reaching down on your road bike, he has it set to where you just drop it in, and there's a magnetic ring that catches it, and you pop it out of the magnetic ring. And because of that magnetic hold, he calls it the Koala Bottle. Right.
Beautiful.
Rabbit trail aside, would you please ask me that question again?
Love it. Yeah.
I think you answered it.
Yeah, that was the answer we were looking for. No. So, it's very interesting that, for example, you're a mindset coach, and you're teaching other people to do these things themselves. I guess I'm really interested to know, do you participate in all of these exercises yourself? And if so, for example, that list exercise, what are some of the things that you write down, and what does your dream life look like as such?
Okay. Yes. Do I practice what I preach? Do I drink my own Kool-Aid? Yes, I drink my own Kool-Aid. And as long as we are able to talk today, I'm happy to tell you stories of the difference drinking my own Kool-Aid has made in my own life. Specifically, regarding to the manifesting story, is not working, financially free, in a way that is conducive for everyone in my network. So it's not just providing for my family, it's providing for everyone in my network's family. So that is on my 10, writing down, looking for, beginning to think at a much higher level as to what's possible, and constantly asking the question, who do I need to be as a person? Who do I need to become? How do I need to think? What do I need to believe about myself and believe about the world? Which is, well, challenging, stretching. Happy to tell you stories about drinking my own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's good to know that you are, because there's a lot of people, and we have an episode on this about like kind of the toxic side of self-development. There's a lot of kind of people that float around that preach a lot of things, but they don't necessarily kind of practice.
Yeah.
So I suppose in terms of like how you actually got to where you are, like you gave us a bit of a backstory in terms of how you got there. But can you maybe tell us some of the struggles or surprises in your industry that you had to overcome to get to where you are in terms of the coaching space?
Okay. Well, in terms of the coaching space, it is this simple. Stand up with something to say. That's it. That is all it comes down to. There is no secret to success. There's no secret recipe. It's just a matter of stand up with something to say. It doesn't matter if what you got to say is good, bad, true, false. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter. The fact that you're standing up with something to say makes you an antenna that begins to attract people that resonate with that. That's it. That's all there is. You don't need a coach or a mentor or a business trainer. You don't know. Just stand up with something to say. There is your business model. Go get them, Tiger. Now, crisis that I had to deal with, things that weren't working in my own life. Remember, I was classically trained. And one thing that I struggled with was stage fright. It didn't bother me to give a speech. I loved giving speeches. But playing a solo, I was terrified. I just absolutely terrified. And when you're in the classical world and you're preparing for a solo, what it looks like is spending about 6 months of your life working on that piece for about 4 to 5 hours a day. And the moment that you come to share it publicly on stage lasts about 15 minutes. It's an insane amount of preparation for a brief moment in time. And so you care about it, you love it, you want to do your best when it counts the most. And because of that, you play your worst the only time that it actually counts, which is when other people get to share this with you. So in that battle, I had tried all the stuff that people say, all the well-meaning motherly advice. Eat a banana before you go on stage. Don't worry about it. Just do your best. Imagine the audience in their underwear. Like, this is stuff that you think would make a difference, but it doesn't. It just makes the situation worse. So here I was, and this had been going on for about 30 years. And every time I had to play under pressure, I played my worst, and it was so miserable that I would want to sell my instrument and just get out of music entirely. So miserable. Now, for you guys that are listening, I don't know if you can relate to that. I don't know if you can relate to something in your life that you are failing at so badly that you want to quit it entirely. This thing that you care about, you want to play your best, you want to do your best, and every time it counts, you just can't. So that's where I was. Well, I had been speaking and training and teaching, training leaders and business owners how to access more of their brain on demand, how to think at a higher level. This has been going on for quite some time. But up until that moment, it had never crossed my mind to practice what I preach. I don't know why. It just hadn't. So here I am on stage, fixing to play the solo, orchestra's playing away, and anxiety's kicking in. And it's like, here we go again. Here, great. great. Here we go again. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute. I could just practice what I preach. Okay, so the mechanism for that situation is the only reason you have the problems you do is because you aren't up to something bigger. The only reason you're struggling with your health and fitness is because you aren't up to something bigger. Whether that's leaving a legacy for your kids, whether that is finishing a triathlon, whatever it is, you're just not up to something bigger, and that's why you keep struggling with it. The only reason I was struggling with stage fright, performance anxiety, is because I wasn't up to something bigger. So I look at the music, I go, why do I even want to do this to start with? Why would I want to share this with the audience? What do I care with my audience? Why? What do I care? What is this music about? Like, why would I even want to? And it, for whatever reason, that particular passage and that particular song for me spoke about the felt experience of being loved for whatever reason. So I decided that in that moment, I was going to be up to the business of my audience having that experience. That's what I was going to be about the business of. Now, this was crazy different from anything I'd done before. Because up until that point, I had been trying to get all the notes right. I've been trying to play my best. I've been trying to look good. I've been trying to avoid making mistakes. I've been trying to avoid looking bad. I've been trying to hit these targets that don't exist. There is no point in time that you did your best. You always could have done a little more. There's no point in time that it was perfect. It always could have been a little bit better. There's no point in time that you avoided making mistakes because you know there was something you could have done a little bit, right? These are things that don't even exist. And by chasing them, you put yourself in a situation of tyranny where you're withholding from yourself the very energy that you need to succeed. It's like trying to breathe while holding your breath. So, why do I want, and I realized I want my audience to have this experience. This is totally different. This is totally different than me getting all the notes right, me trying to play my best, and me wanting the audience to be impressed because I got the notes right and I played my best. This is totally different. So I decide I'm going to commit to that and I start playing. And because I had never done this before, my brain was just firing off the network it was used to. So my brain would say, you're about to miss this note. And I would say, I'm not about that game. I'm playing for what's possible in my audience's life, that in this moment they would have the felt experience of being loved. And then the next note would come up. And my brain would say, you might miss this one. And I would have to recommit myself. It doesn't matter. I'm not in the game of getting all the notes right. I'm in the game of what's possible in my audience's life. Specifically, that during this moment, they would have the felt experience of being loved. And the next one would come up, and my brain would fire off that network. This I was a little bit out of tune. And I would have to recommit myself. Every single note, I had to recommit myself for what was possible in my audience's life. Every single note. This took a ridiculous amount of focus and commitment. But by the end of it, oddly enough, I had played better under pressure than I ever had before. But here's the real victory. The real victory is that when that was over, I couldn't wait to do it again. And I had never, in all of my classical music, experienced that. That was the victory because I took on a bigger problem. I got more stories about drinking my own Kool-Aid, but
I kind of wanted to dive into that a little more. So, in terms of kind of practicing what you preach as such, like if you were to imagine that you woke up completely energized, ready to attack the day, and it was your ideal day, something that you are really, really proud of, like you're doing all the actions that you kind of want to do to get to that ideal self each day. What does that actually look like? And does music still have a big part in your life? Like, do you still play music in between?
What does my ideal day look like?
Yeah, like what kind of actions are you taking? Are they like processes and practices that you have throughout the day?
Okay, so my ideal day starts with reading. After that, there is exercise. Usually it's weights. If it's not a weights day, then in the afternoon, I'll be going for a mountain bike ride. But usually it's weights. The majority of the week. I only go for a ride like twice a week. After that, it is getting into the creation, whether it's a chapter in the book, whether it's a podcast episode, whether it's emotional bank deposits with my clients, because emotional bank deposits are what build high-value relationships. After that, it is some form of teaching and training. Sometimes that is the handful of clients that I work with that day. Sometimes that's speaking on stage. Sometimes that's teaching a workshop. And then after that, it ends with spending time with my son. Right now, he is really into baseball. So we're doing like travel baseball and Little League and that kind of stuff. So we'll, whatever, he's pitching. I'll get the catcher's mitt out. We might go to the batting cages. We might go out to the field, hit some bombs. And that's usually how my day might end. So that's my ideal day. And then you had the other question. What was the question after that?
Like in terms of music, like, you're saying you were doing that full time. Like, is that still a big part of your life now?
So obviously I'm not full-time music anymore. That's been 10 years ago. Music does still play a role in my life. The music that I kept, for whatever reason, was playing music for weddings. So in the weekend, I'll spend an hour playing in a string quartet for somebody else's wedding. And that's kind of how I managed to keep music involved in my life. My son is just now getting started on the cello. This is his first year. He's in the 5th grade. So I have a chance to sit next to him and play one of his school songs with him. But right now, that's the extent of live performing in my life, is playing for weddings and cocktail hours and that kind of stuff on the weekend.
Beautiful. So just to kind of speak to that story that you mentioned before, I really love how powerful that is as well, where just the higher purpose element to it. We teach like a mission statement kind of system in our mentorship program, and part of that is knowing what's actually at stake. So, what was happening in your situation, I guess, is, your ego was trying to kind of sabotage you, right? And then all of a sudden you took yourself out of that sabotage because you were like, no, it's not about me. It's actually about this higher purpose, which is not about me at all. It's about, providing fantastic, something great for the audience. And there's nothing the ego can do to actually, get through that barrier, I suppose, because it's like, what is at stake? And if there's something at stake that's higher than you, like you have a larger purpose in life, I guess I just wanted to reframe that because it is so powerful. And that's like, there's different language that we're speaking, but we're saying the same thing, which is super interesting.
There's a story about Gandhi that I think a lot of people don't know, but most people know Gandhi as this man that united a country that was divided 4 ways with 4 different castes and political and religious populations trying to kill each other off. And Gandhi is the one who ushered in peace for India. And that sounds great. And like, wow, what an amazing guy. He fought that battle for decades before it finally came to pass. What most people don't know about Gandhi, though, is that isn't who started. When Gandhi, before he was the person that we know as Gandhi, he was a lawyer. He was a lawyer in England, and he was a crappy lawyer. On his first case, he was so afraid of speaking in public that he fled the courtroom, and his assistant had to close the case for him. On his second case, he went back to his client the night before, gave him back all his money, said, listen, man, I'm terrified of speaking in public. I cannot represent you in clear conscience. Here's all your money back. So Gandhi, the man who spoke so profoundly that he united an entire nation, started out terrified of speaking in public. So what happened? Well, he failed as a lawyer in England. He moved to South Africa, going to hang out his law shingle there, see what happens. While he's in South Africa, he notices that his countrymen, his people, were horribly oppressed. Now, how did Gandhi overcome his fear of speaking in public? Did he buy an ebook for 99 cents? Did he take Tony Robbins' public speaking course? Like, No, because intuitively, you know that those types of things keep you in a world where you're still dealing with the problem. You're just more sophisticated at pushing it and resisting it away. And Gandhi, the guy who spoke so profoundly that he had united an entire nation, clearly wasn't dealing with it. It wasn't even on his radar. So here's what happened. When he was in South Africa and he decided that he was going to be up to the business of peace in India, nobody asked him, nobody gave him permission, nobody knighted him or bequeathed him or installed him as a position in government. No, he just decided there will be peace in India because I said so. That's it. That's it. Remember, the plan for success is stand up with something to say. That's all it comes down to. Gandhi said there will be peace in India because I said so. Now, here's the deal. When you represent peace for an entire nation, then you don't care what people think about you as a person while you're talking. You don't care about tomatoes. You don't care about boos. You don't care about hisses. You don't care about being thrown off stage because you're up to something a lot bigger than that. Peace in India. And you don't care how it happens. You're going to usher it in one way or the other. That is what happens when you take on a bigger problem. Your little problems stop existing.
It's a perfect example. So I suppose just to switch gears here before we wrap it up, you mentioned at the start how powerful music is, and just how much it can trigger in the average person's brain. Is there any kind of little tricks or hacks that anybody can do with music to kind of unlock some of that which you were talking about?
Okay. Obviously, you can get involved in music, learn to play the piano, learn to play the guitar, whatever it is. The thing is, if you're engaged in making music, it's going to rewire the way your brain solves problems. You can take the brain of a musician, hold it in your hands, and the fiber network that allows the right and left half to communicate, that cross-fiber network is called the corpus callosum. In your hands, you can see that the corpus callosum is visibly thicker in the brain of a musician than the brain of a non-musician. So sure, you can get involved in music, play guitar, play drums, sing in a choir, play piano, start taking lessons, whatever it is, and you're going to increase that fiber network, and you're going to increase your brain's ability to hold disparaging concepts gently at the same time without insisting that one of them is right and the other one is wrong. That's true. But it's not going to get you the ability to access different parts of your brain on demand for business. How do you think innovatively? How do you think powerfully? How do you think like a leader? How do you think like somebody who causes things to happen instead of is in that hustle cycle of checking things off? To access different parts of your brain that way, you can start with some stupid, silly exercises. For example, brush your teeth with the opposite hand. That sounds dumb until you try it. Talk on the phone while you're walking backwards. Sounds dumb until you try it. And your brain has to rewire itself to solve problems in a different way. This begins to kick off the innovation and the creativity that's possible in your mind. Of course, in my work, we just do the mindset push-ups because the mindset push-ups are what rewire the brain to access it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Can you touch a little bit on those mindset push-ups before we end this?
Just like a physical push-up rewires your nervous system and your metabolism and the way your body responds to things like food and exercise, a mindset push-up rewires your neurology. It rewires the framework, the scaffolding, that neural net that your brain fires off whenever it's trying to make sense of the world. A mindset push-up does that. Remember, we did the reality hacking a while back, and I said that anybody can come up with 3 pieces of evidence as to why that outlandish thing is starting to become true. Starting to become true. Anybody can do 3. 5 is challenging. 10 is nearly impossible. But that 10 is actually what rewires the brain. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger said. He said, I don't count reps. I only start counting when it starts hurting. Because that's the only time that it counts. So between 5 pieces of evidence and 10 pieces of evidence, that's when your brain starts rewiring itself. That's a type of mindset push-up that you can do every day. Another one that's really easy, well, I say really easy, it's easy to explain, is if you're in a business where you have a metric, you ship 100 products a month on average, you see 100 clients a month on average, you make 100,000 a month on average. Like there is some metric that your business can be measured by. Your podcast has 10,000 downloads a month on average, whatever it is. Okay. Take that metric, add a 0 to it. So like if you're a realtor, you help people sell houses and you do 4 houses a month on average, we're going to add a 0. So now it's 40 houses a month. And I want you to put together a plan that would make that realistic. So now you're thinking like, well, if I did this over time, did that over time, and I was real clear on my zone of genius and my sweet spot, and I started taking my KPIs, my key performance indicators seriously, doing the boring work every day. This time, a year from now, it's possible that I could scale up to 40 a month. Okay. Now I want you to put a plan together that will take you from where you're at doing 4 deals a month to 40 deals a month. And I want you to put that plan together so that it's workable in 30 days. Now, most people, they say that can't be done. It's impossible. No, it's only impossible with the current strategies you're coming up with because your current strategies make sense. And what makes sense is the same thing that has you stuck to start with. To start thinking at a higher level, we've got to access a totally different kind of thought process. And it's not going to make sense. So they say, well, I could do it if I had $100,000 for ad spend. Do you have that? But I don't. Okay. So spending extra money on ads, that's not a solution. Keep trying. Well, I could do it if I had a staff of 50 people that were cold calling every day. Do you have a staff of 50 people? No. Okay, that's not a solution. Keep trying. And we keep going until their brain finally realizes ways that it could be done to get from where they're at to 10 times greater business in 30 days. Because at that point, they're thinking about things that scale. I can't make call conversions one-on-one. That doesn't scale. What I need to do is be speaking to rooms of people where I'm presenting the sales message 1 on 100 or 1 on 500 or 1 on 1,000. What I need to do is be interviewing on podcasts. What I need to be doing is interviewing on the local news or radio or TV or having my articles in magazines so that I'm getting my sales message in front of 1,000 or 10,000 people at one time. If I was doing that, then yeah, I would be able to attract 1,000 leads, and that would turn into maybe 100 serious leads, and that would turn into maybe 40 actual deals by the end of the month if I was doing that. Oh, but man, it's going to take some labor and some help. I'm going to need to scale up and hire some more staff, and right now I don't have the resources to do that. Okay, so how could you get the staff if you don't have the resources right now? And at first they're like, it can't be done. If I don't have the money, it can't be done. Keep thinking. And eventually they start to realize that they don't have to have the money. They just have to have the relationship. So who could you barter with or partner with or trade with or consult with? Who could you give maybe a percentage of the company to? Who could you get paid 30 days from now? Who could you make an agreement with? How could you put this together? Because that is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is things breaking down and you having to find a creative way around it because you don't have the time or money or help. This exercise starts as impossible. It ends with totally possible. And the only reason you're not doing it is because it's terrifying now that you realize it can be done. And so then we have to get another series of mindset push-ups and exercises that clear up that fear. I hope that answers your question. An exercise that causes your brain to think in ways it normally wouldn't.
For sure. We call those limiting beliefs here. And that's the main problem that we find our customers have it's just that everyone has beliefs and they are limiting them from getting where they need to go. And if they can see those limiting beliefs and, destroy those limiting beliefs, get through them, then they can potentially, they're like, it's impossible. Well, that's a limiting belief, Jarrod, you've provided so much value on this podcast and we really appreciate it. I have no doubt that some of our audience would love to check out some of your work further. Where is the best place to do that, man?
Hop over to mindsetperformance.co. mindsetperformance.co. You can see what the mind scan looks like, download a sample report. You can, try the mind scan yourself. You don't even have to be a client of mine to try the mind scan. Just give it a try. You can get an executive summary of my book right away. Bam, just like that. mindsetperformance.co.
Thank you very much, man. Any parting words of wisdom?
See, this is where I'm supposed to say something like witty.
Yeah, or profound.
Profound, yeah.
Witty or profound. I don't have anything witty or profound. I would just say the less you work, the more you make.
Love it.
If you were trying to solve a problem by working harder, you're making less. Solve it by working less, and you'll start making more.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, man. Really appreciate your time.
Good times.